Hi, I'm Heyzeus, and this video is going to be comparing skins from Fortnite, PUBG and CSGO. Skins have, for better or worse, become a big part of all of these games, and I want to compare them, particularly on the technical level, beyond just what they look like in-game, because what you can do with them outside the game can be a very big deal. Two things before I go any further though. First of all, this video is sponsored by levels.gg, an awesome site that allows you to level up your Steam account quick and easy. Make sure you use the code Heyzeus to get a 30% bonus on the number of sets you get. Also, my friend HaDe is giving away a M4 AONS Decimator. A link to enter that is in the description below if you'd like to have a chance to win. Otherwise, we'll get started. So, we'll start with CSGO. There's a few reasons why I want to start with this game, and some of them will become more apparent as the video progresses, but the main reason is simply that CSGO has the most complicated skin system, so it's easiest to use this game as a starting point for any later comparisons. First and foremost, we need to talk about what sorts of skins Counter-Strike has. This is stating the bleeding obvious for anybody who watches my videos regularly. There is gun skins, knife skins, and glove skins in Counter-Strike. Also, you can customize the gun skins using stickers, and there's also graffitis, but no one cares about graffiti, so they can GTFO. In terms of how these items are organized, and when I talk about organization, I'm talking about the way that skins are structured to determine their value relative to one another. CSGO skins are divided into collections with tiers of rarity within any given collection. Each individual item also has a fixed wear value, which impacts its appearance and value as well. And finally, there's also patterns, which can give radically different finishes by applying the texture in different ways to the skin. Now, if you're not familiar with Counter-Strike, that probably sounds a bit complicated. I imagine most people watching probably are though, but either way, the interesting thing about all this is it was all very intentional from Valve from the start. They wanted to have all these complicated things affecting the value of skins, and I'll let one of the employees who was involved in developing skins explain.
We know that economies are more fun when there are more people participating. They're also more fun when there are lots of items to compare and lots of different ways to compare them. So we didn't want to just create items with a broad range of value. We also wanted to create items that could be valued in different ways, because players with different priorities can actually care about different aspects of the same item. Essentially,
what she's saying here is that they introduced all sorts of different attributes so that different items would be valued in different ways by different people. Funnily enough, not all of it went to plan. She goes into more detail later on in the lecture. For example, they originally thought that very colourful weapons would be less desirable. That's why very colourful stuff is always covert or classified. It's always rarer skins. Obviously that didn't pan out. They also expected that really battle-scarred skins with very high wear values and very damaged paint jobs, would also be considered more desirable. That didn't pan out either. Battle-scarred skins are very cheap. But ironically, if Valve's original plan had worked out, the skins market would probably be even more complicated today. As for how items are acquired in CSGO, items are created via drops from playing the game and from opening cases, which also come from drops. The only exception to this are things like stickers, which are sold by Valve in-game for a fixed price, although often they'll be in capsules as well, and a few things like certain graffitis and music kits and stuff like that. Otherwise, Valve doesn't directly set the price. They do set the rarity, they do set the key price, but these only influence overall prices, they don't determine them. So CSGO, in a lot of senses, is a sort of free market economy. In terms of second-hand sources to acquire skins, Counter-Strike also has quite a few options. Skins are tradable between players, even if there is an annoying trade hold at this point. Skins can be exchanged through a crafting system in-game, the trade-up contract. Skins can be sold on the Steam community market and at present also other third-party sites. So there's a lot of options here, and this monetization aspect is all done in real currency, was very, very deliberate, and I'll refer to the relevant Valve employee.
So let's focus for a second on the marketplace. This is one of the ways that our customers can get at the content. So as a company, we had a unique opportunity. This was the first time that we were launching an economy since the market went live. We decided that CSGO would become our first game in which every item can be placed on the marketplace, and individual items can't be bought any other way. In fact, the only thing that we planned to sell directly were the keys used to open our case drops.
Now, this decision to center the CSGO economy on the marketplace has been one of its real defining features, but also a real Pandora's box. It's played into both its success as a game, but also a lot of the ethical issues surrounding it, particularly by facilitating gambling and betting services, and making scamming easier to profit from. And this is going to be important to keep in mind when looking at the next two games. First of all, we'll consider PUBG. Unlike Fortnite, this is also a Steam game, so it has access to a lot of the underlying infrastructure that CSGO also uses. As far as the actual skins go, because it's a third-person shooter, there's obviously going to be some difference. We've got a lot of clothing, for instance. We do have guns and melee weapons as well. Now, as a distinction between the skin systems of each game, I think this one is entirely superficial. They're both sticking a coat of paint on the visible parts of the player model, and I don't think it's really the area that needs to be focused on. One area where PUBG skins are really similar to CSGO skins is in the way that they're organised. Skins are de facto organised into collections depending on what crate they're from. Admittedly, it isn't always displayed as clearly as it is in CSGO, but the end result is basically the same. And they also have tiers of rarity marked out by colour. Similar colours to CSGO as it happens, particularly on the rarer items. There's no wear values or patterns here though, which may or may not be bad depending on how you look at it. I know when gloves were introduced to CSGO, lots of people accused Valve of ripping them off because the gloves had wear values, so I can only imagine how the PUBG community would react to item wares being brought into the game. So moving on to the next category, which is how items are acquired. With the odd exception, like some pre-order items in PUBG come from crates. Crates are purchased using battle points, which you get by playing the game, which can be spent on crates. And crates, with a few exceptions from early on in the game's history, are opened with keys. The only real distinction between this system and CSGO's case system is the fact that you can get more than one case drop per week. Otherwise, there's very little difference. Also, similar to Counter-Strike, prices aren't regulated in this market. They're influenced by key prices and drop percentage chances from cases, which are publicly known, by the way. That checkered cloth mask, 25 times more rare than a knife from a CSGO case. How about that? But ultimately, the prices are determined by the market rather than by the developers. It's another free market, essentially. And once again, there's a bit of deja vu going on here. PUBG skins can be traded, sold on the market, or sold on third-party sites. The only thing you can't do is craft them through some equivalent to trade-up contracts, unless you're using a gambling site. Which is a bit sad from my perspective because I'm a trade-ups person, but probably doesn't matter that much in the long run. Anyway, at this point, you may be noticing some similarity between PUBG's skins economy and CSGO's skins economy. In fact, you'd almost expect PUBG's developer to say this.
Like, I want to create like a skin economy, and there will be crates and skins, probably much more like the CSGO model.
Well, who would have guessed? Now, I know that this sounds almost a bit like I'm accusing him of stealing ideas from CSGO, and that's not my intent. I actually fully endorse developers borrowing successful ideas for building economies from other games. I think it's a sensible thing to do. I find it interesting though that you decided to go for the unregulated model like CSGO. I find it hard to believe that they didn't know what it meant, because CSGO is infamous for the gambling and betting side of its economy, and it's not a question of when PUBG will get caught up in it, because it's already happened. Something that Valve definitely sped up with their trade hold for CSGO as well. As you can see, demand has really shifted from CSGO items to PUBG items in response. And this will have ramifications in the long run. Although, if things go anything like they have with CSGO, you probably won't see anything other than a light tap on the wrist for some years to come. And in the meantime, the game's economy will probably get a major boost from all the extra demand from gambling sites. Obviously, that is speculation to some extent. It's impossible to know for sure what's going to happen, but all in all, CSGO has benefited from all this gambling stuff going on, regardless of all the downsides, and I would imagine the same thing is going to happen with PUBG. So that brings us to Fortnite Battle Royale.
Now the latest video game craze is Fortnite. It's free, addictive, violent, and kids love it. Should you be worried?
Oh yeah, that's right, they're going to ban it in Australia. I mean, look at this petition, how will we ever withstand this? Fortnite, Typically, designers will make a skin for any part of the character you can see, and it's basically the case here as well. We've got outfits, this one looks like me actually, melee weapons or harvesting tools. We've also got skins for gliders, and there's a few other small things. There's backpacks, emotes, emoticons, no gun skins, which is a potential area for expansion, but in all fairness, it's probably not a big loss. They don't really work that well in third-person shooters. Like, if you compare guns in CSGO to guns in PUBG, the CSGO ones look nicer, and it's just because they're viewed in the first person and you can get a lot more detail into them. It's the trade-off for not having outfits, I guess. In terms of how skins are organised, they're organised into tiers of value, which are, they're not based on colour, but the colour defines which one's which. Items also sometimes come in sets, marking them out as having the same visual theme. This isn't as important as it is in CSGO and PUBG though, because it doesn't really affect the way they're acquired. So, as for how you get these items, this is where the game really deviates from CSGO and PUBG. Skins can be acquired in two ways. First of all, they can be purchased from the in-game store. Now, this has to be done with an in-game currency, which you pay the developers for. Admittedly, there are some ways of getting free V-Bucks if you own Slay of the World, but for the most part, you've got to pay for them. And the items are purchased from the developer, not the players. There are also skins you can win through playing the game, in particular by leveling up battle passes, which you do have to pay for, but it's still not the same as buying skins directly themselves. So we can already see a big distinction here. You're buying individual items directly from the developer, while as in CSGO and PUBG, you can only really buy keys from the developer, aside from the odd exception like stickers in CSGO. So it's already a very different model in that sense. By implication, this means that the prices of items are regulated. They're set by the developer. It's not a free market. In fact, it's not a market at all because there's no trading and reselling items. Now, this might seem like it makes Fortnite the odd one out, but that's not really the case. Their model is probably a lot more normal. Valve is very unusual in promoting a sort of free market model, although it does seem to fit very well with their whole ethos as a company. Anyone who's familiar with how they act in esports would notice that they're very hands-off, and the sort of free market skins economy fits quite well with that. But Valve's way of doing things is odd. Fortnite's approach is more the norm. And in that regard, it's a fairly standard microtransactions setup. Although admittedly, as microtransactions go, some of the items are fairly expensive. Obviously, it's one of the things that make it possible to be a free-to-play game, and it's not attempting to facilitate an economy in the same way that CSGO and PUBG do. To some extent, having outfits still provides an extra incentive to play the game, but there's no community created around the game's skins, in the same sense that it does for the other two games. Once again, that isn't meant as criticism, it's just a different model. And it's a model that obviously avoids some of the problems that PUBG and CSGO have had, like gambling and betting. But what I wanted to finish on here was to actually talk about what would happen if Fortnite Battle Royale introduced some of the features similar to CSGO and PUBG and create a market. Because there's a lot of discussion and speculation about this happening, and there's some evidence that at least a gift system will be introduced, and by looking at these two Steam games, we can see what the effect on Fortnite might be. First of all, if you introduce a trading system, you will very quickly have people looking at ways to exchange skins for real money, which is going to be a massive, massive can of worms. It was a rampant source of scamming in CSGO. Eventually, this was partially solved by sites like OP Skins coming in, and that meant the problem could be bypassed in PUBG, but this was only possible because Valve was okay with it. If they wanted to kill these sites, they could in an instant. So Epic Games is going to have to consent to it happening, and I think developers being okay with their items being monetized like that is the exception, not the rule. So that's already a very big question mark. On top of that, if it is possible to exchange items for real money, you will very quickly have gambling sites attempting to move in, which is something that was not lost on a lot of the commentators I watched talking about this topic while I was researching this video. One caveat though, I don't know whether having bot accounts to collect skins would work in Fortnite. It's obviously very easy to do with the Steam API, but on the technical side, I don't know whether or not that would work in Fortnite. But if it can, assuming all those hypothetical boxes are checked, well, expect Fortnite to become a gambling game overnight. But what about the benefits? Because skins have done wonders for CSGO. It was a dead game before they were introduced, and now that there's this 7-day trade hold, it'll probably be a dead game again. Well, I'm not sure the benefits will necessarily extend to a game like Fortnite. CSGO grew very slowly. Fortnite has grown explosively to a size that's miles bigger than CSGO has ever been, and the player base, comparatively, is probably a lot more casual. And I think in this context, a skin economy will be like throwing a pebble in the water if there's a shift in public interest away from the game. If you want a good example, look at PUBG. It also grew at breakneck speed. It's about 3 times bigger than CSGO has ever been, but having a skins economy hasn't stopped it from declining fairly quickly after its peak. It might recover or at least stabilise, but it makes me think that when a game grows explosively, skins won't have the same influence that they've had in smaller games like CSGO that hasn't grown at such a breakneck pace. But on top of all that, there's an additional reason why I don't think we'll ever see a proper market develop in Fortnite. It would completely destroy Epic's model for profiting from the game. CSGO and PUBG are designed to function as a market. The developer sets the scarcity and sells the keys. The system they've made is designed to allow them to profit with an otherwise free market. Fortnite is not. They want you buying individual items from them at fixed prices, and an aftermarket would more or less destroy that because you'd have people flogging off their skins at a discount once they stop playing. And as soon as the game stops growing, there'd be an overabundance of every single skin. That's probably exaggerating a little bit, but there'd be an overabundance of a lot of skins and they'd barely sell a thing. You could maybe have, a limited trading system that wouldn't suffer from this problem, but you couldn't have a proper market, which is why I don't think we'll ever see a lot of this stuff in Fortnite. And whether that's good or bad, for better or worse, that's up to you. Anyway, that's pretty much it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please like, comment, subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Otherwise, trust the numbers, not your gut. I'm Heyzeus. Thanks for watching. See ya.